It's the summer of 1939. In a small village in Poland, a mother tucks her children into bed, whispering promises of safety. Outside, whispers of war grow louder. Neighbors gather, exchanging fearful glances, while radios buzz with unsettling news. The world is on the brink of unimaginable change. Our story begins years earlier, in 1919. The Treaty of Versailles ended the Great War but left deep scars. Germany, a nation humiliated and burdened with reparations, harbored a growing resentment. In this climate of despair, a voice of defiance emerged. Adolf Hitler promised hope, strength, and revival. By 1933, he had risen to power, captivating a nation desperate for change. Germany began to rebuild its military might, defying the Treaty of Versailles. In 1936, they boldly marched into the Rhineland. The world watched in silence. August 1939, a secret pact between Hitler and Stalin shocks the world. Poland is to be divided, and Europe's fate hangs in the balance. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland, setting off a chain of events that would lead to the deadliest conflict in human history. Join us as we explore the invasion of Poland and the early days of World War II. September 1st, 1939. The world wakes up to a new reality. Germany invades Poland, launching a conflict that would soon engulf the entire globe. Germany employs a new military strategy called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Combining airstrikes, fast-moving tanks, and infantry, the Germans overwhelm Polish defenses with unprecedented speed and ferocity. As the German war machine advances, millions of Polish civilians are caught in the crossfire. Families are torn apart, cities reduced to rubble, and a nation brought to its knees in just weeks. In response, Britain and France declare war on Germany on September 3, 1939. However, their support comes too late for Poland, which is swiftly divided between Germany and the Soviet Union, as per their secret pact. The German-Soviet non-aggression pact is revealed in full. Poland is split between the two powers, and its people face a grim future under occupation. For the next few months, a period known as the Phony War ensues on the Western Front. Despite the declaration of war, little combat occurs as both sides prepare for the inevitable clash. During this lull, Germany fortifies its positions and plans the next phase of its expansion. Meanwhile, the world holds its breath, waiting for the next move. Despite the rapid fall of Poland, the spirit of resistance remains. The world braces for a conflict that promises to be unlike any before. In our next section, we will explore the early battles on the Western Front and the fight for survival in the Battle of Britain. With Poland under their control, the Germans turn their attention to the West. The stage is set for the next phase of their relentless campaign. For several months, Europe experienced a strange calm known as the Phony War. Both sides fortified their positions, awaiting the storm to come. In April 1940, the Phony War ended as Germany unleashed a lightning-fast invasion on Denmark and Norway. This was followed by assaults on Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg in May. Blitzkrieg tactics once again proved devastatingly effective. France, despite its strong defenses along the Maginot Line, was quickly overwhelmed. German forces bypassed the fortifications, leading to the rapid fall of Paris. By June 1940, France had surrendered. Amidst the chaos, a miraculous evacuation took place at Dunkirk. Over 330,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from the beaches by a fleet of civilian boats, saving the core of the British Army. With France fallen, Britain stood isolated against the Axis powers. Prime Minister Winston Churchill's determination and speeches motivated the nation to remain steadfast and prepare for the challenges ahead. In the summer of 1940, the Battle of Britain commenced. The Luftwaffe aimed to gain air superiority over the RAF as a precursor to a full-scale invasion. The skies above Britain became a fierce battleground. Failing to defeat the RAF, Hitler turned to a campaign of terror known as the Blitz. Night after night, German bombers targeted British cities. Despite the devastation, the British spirit remained unbroken. The Battle of Britain was a significant setback for Hitler's forces, demonstrating that Britain could withstand their advances. This victory highlighted that the Axis powers were not unstoppable. Next, we examine how the front lines expanded as the Axis sought to extend their reach. While Europe was embroiled in conflict, the Axis powers sought to expand their influence across the globe. Italy, under Mussolini, Japan in the Pacific, and Germany's continued aggression set the stage for a world at war. Italy, under Benito Mussolini, pursued its imperial ambitions with brutal efficiency. In 1935, Mussolini invaded Ethiopia, employing overwhelming force against poorly equipped defenders. By 1939, Italy had annexed Albania, further extending its reach in the Balkans. The Spanish Civil War, 1936–1939, became a proving ground for Axis tactics and technology. General Francisco Franco, with aid from Hitler and Mussolini, emerged victorious, establishing a fascist regime in Spain. This conflict also foreshadowed the horrors to come. Meanwhile, Japan aggressively expanded its empire in East Asia. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, followed by a brutal campaign in China. By 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, bringing the United States into the war and expanding the conflict across the Pacific. The Rome-Berlin-Tokyo axis was solidified through a series of pacts and agreements, aligning the military strategies and ambitions of these three powers. Together, they aimed to dominate Europe, Africa, and Asia. In North Africa, German General Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, led the Africa Corps in a series of swift victories against Allied forces. Meanwhile, the Axis powers also launched successful invasions of Greece and Yugoslavia, further consolidating their control. While the Axis powers appeared unstoppable, resistance movements began to emerge in occupied territories. Ordinary people risked their lives to fight back against the oppressors, sowing the seeds of future uprisings. The Axis powers seemed poised to reshape the world in their image. Yet, the tide of war was turning. In our next section, we will delve into Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's ambitious and ultimately disastrous invasion of the Soviet Union. June 22, 1941. Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history, aiming to crush the Soviet Union and secure vital resources for the Third Reich. At dawn, over 3 million German soldiers, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft, crossed into Soviet territory. Hitler was confident of a swift victory, underestimating the resilience and sheer vastness of the Soviet Union. The initial phase of the invasion was a stunning success for the Germans. Utilizing Blitzkrieg tactics, they captured vast swathes of territory, encircling and destroying entire Soviet armies. However, the tide began to turn as the Soviets launched fierce counteroffensives. The siege of Leningrad became a symbol of Soviet endurance, while the Battle of Moscow marked the first major defeat for the Germans on the Eastern Front. Unprepared for the brutal Russian winter, German troops faced freezing temperatures and supply shortages. Their advance stalled, and morale plummeted as the Soviets continued their relentless defense. By the end of 1941, the Soviets managed to halt the German advance and launch their own counteroffensives. The defense of Moscow was a turning point, showcasing the determination and resilience of the Soviet people. The siege of Leningrad lasted 872 days, with citizens enduring starvation, bombings, and unimaginable hardship. Despite this, their spirit remained unbroken, and the city never fell to the Germans. The Eastern Front was characterized by its brutality and immense human cost. Millions of Soviet soldiers and civilians perished, yet their sacrifices turned the tide of the war. Operation Barbarossa failed to achieve its objectives, and the Soviets began to push back, reclaiming their territory inch by inch. In our next section, we will delve into one of the most pivotal battles of the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad. August 23, 1942. Stalingrad, a city on the Volga River, becomes the focal point of one of the deadliest battles in human history. The outcome of this clash would determine the fate of the Eastern Front and the course of World War II. Hitler was determined to capture Stalingrad, both for its strategic importance and as a symbolic victory. The city bore the name of his nemesis, Joseph Stalin, making it a key propaganda target. On August 23, 1942, the Germans launched a massive aerial bombardment, reducing much of Stalingrad to rubble. Despite the devastation, the city's defenders and civilians prepared for a grueling battle. Stalingrad became a battlefield unlike any other. Soldiers fought block by block, building by building, in brutal close-quarters combat. The Soviets, commanded by General Vasily Chuikov, adopted a strategy of hugging the enemy to neutralize German air superiority. Soviet snipers, like Vasily Zaitsev, became legendary, targeting German officers and sowing fear among the invaders. Pavlov's house, a fortified apartment building, symbolized the tenacity of Soviet resistance, holding out for months against relentless attacks. As winter set in, The Soviets launched Operation Uranus, a massive counteroffensive aimed at encircling the German Sixth Army. The harsh winter conditions compounded the Germans' dire situation. Trapped in the freezing ruins of Stalingrad, the German soldiers faced starvation, disease, and constant Soviet attacks. Despite Hitler's orders to hold the city at all costs, the situation became untenable. On February 2, 1943, the encircled German Sixth Army, now decimated and desperate, finally surrendered. The Battle of Stalingrad ended in a decisive Soviet victory, marking a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front. The victory at Stalingrad was a crucial moment in the Eastern Front, altering the course of the conflict. It challenged earlier beliefs about the strength of the Axis forces and boosted Soviet morale, leading to a series of successful Soviet operations. With the tide turning in favor of the Allies, the Soviets began reclaiming their territory inch by inch. In our next section, we will explore the turning tide of the war, the impact of Allied support, and the path to eventual victory in Europe. After the decisive victory at Stalingrad, the tide of war began to turn. The Soviets pushed westward, and the Allies intensified their efforts on multiple fronts. The stage was set for a series of offensives that would eventually lead to the downfall of the Axis powers. The Battle of Kursk in July 1943 marked the largest tank battle in history. Soviet forces successfully repelled the German offensive, solidifying their dominance on the Eastern Front. On D-Day, Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy, facing fierce resistance from German defenders. The bravery and sacrifice of these soldiers paved the way for the liberation of Western Europe. By August 1944, Paris was liberated. The Allies continued their advance, pushing through France and into Germany. The Axis powers were now on the defensive, facing relentless pressure from all sides. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Red Army continued its relentless advance, liberating key cities and pushing the Germans back. By early 1945, they were closing in on Berlin. Allied leaders met at conferences in Tehran and Yalta, planning the final stages of the war and the post-war order. Their collaboration was crucial in coordinating the massive military efforts required to defeat the Axis. In December 1944, the Germans launched a final counter-offensive in the Ardennes, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Despite initial successes, the Allies eventually repelled the attack. By April 1945, Berlin was surrounded. With Berlin surrounded, Adolf Hitler took his own life on April 30, 1945. German forces continued to fight, but ultimately surrendered on May 8, 1945, marking Victory in Europe Day, VE Day. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Allied forces engaged in a brutal island-hopping campaign against Japan. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. The success of the Allies was greatly aided by support and collaboration. The Lend-Lease program provided vital resources to the Soviet Union and other allies, while joint operations showcased the power of unity against a common enemy. The aftermath of World War II left much of Europe and Asia in ruins. Millions were displaced, cities lay in rubble, and the world faced the immense task of rebuilding. The early years of World War II were marked by devastation, bravery, and immense sacrifice. As the world rebuilt, the lessons learned from this conflict would shape the future. In our conclusion, we reflect on the impact of these events and look forward to the major milestones that followed. As the world emerged from the ashes of World War II, the enormity of the conflict's impact became clear. Nations came together to rebuild, remember, and ensure that such a tragedy would never happen again. We started with the Treaty of Versailles, which led to growing discontent in Germany. We then saw the rise of Adolf Hitler. The Blitzkrieg's impact in Poland and Britain's strong defense during the Battle of Britain were also notable events. The human stories of World War II remind us of the profound impact on individuals. From soldiers on the front lines to civilians enduring occupation and bombings, their courage and resilience continue to inspire. Remembrance is essential. By honoring those who fought and those who perished, we acknowledge the sacrifices made and the lessons learned. The horrors of the Holocaust, the devastation of war, and the value of peace are lessons that must never be forgotten. World War II reshaped the global order. The United Nations was established to promote peace and prevent future conflicts. The Marshall Plan helped rebuild war-torn Europe, while the seeds of the Cold War were planted, leading to a new geopolitical struggle. The legacy of World War II is still felt today. It shaped our modern world, influencing international relations, national policies, and our collective memory. The lessons of the war remind us of the importance of vigilance, unity, and the relentless pursuit of peace. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the pivotal early years of World War II. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Together, let's ensure that the lessons of the past continue to guide us towards a better future.